All right, I think we can get started. Chisholm, if you want to share the slide view, and then Alice, or actually Alice, if you want to go ahead and do an introduction and welcome, I can pin your video.
Yeah. Thank you, Marsha, and thank you, Jason, for putting everything together. Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible enough. So my name is Alice Amiga. I'm president of the African Society. Thank you very much. That is what I'm here to say for taking time to volunteer willingly to be part of the camp project. We at ASCU couldn't have done this without you. We are immensely grateful because we believe you will impact our mentees positively. We also appreciate the fact that you are going to spare at least time with one mentor, and I know some of you are doing two. And so I know this is so much effort that you're putting in, and I'm here to say we do recognize the effort that you're putting in to make sure that more Africans are here in Cambridge, taking on various scholarships and positions in faculties as well. And I know this will go a long way to increase the diversity that the university is looking to improve. And so thank you. And I hope this will be a fulfilling project for yourselves as well. So it's not just about we taking away from you, but also we giving back in any way that we can, so that we know that this will be much more value to you beyond just helping Africans get into Cambridge. So thank you and all the best.
Thank you so much for stopping in, Alice. Alice is being really humble in her introduction. She was a part of the origin of this work, and so a lot of this wouldn't be possible without herself, people like Cynthia, who have been so incredibly involved. So we're really excited to be able to kind of carry that mantle on. But we're also open to a lot of the ways that you all will help us improve the program and think about its longevity going forward. So again, thank you for all of your time, but we also really appreciate Alice for being part of that visionary board that was willing to kind of take a big jump and decide to start this program that we're able to participate in now. So thank you to you as well, Alice. And then I can introduce myself, and then she's going to do the same, and then we can start with slides. And for those who I just let in out of the waiting room, we've just started. Alice, who's the president of the African Society, just introduced herself, gave a welcome, and thanked the mentors here. And so we're going to do introductions for the two of us that are co-chairs of the program, and then we'll move into the slides, which will be led by Chisholm. So hi, for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Maisha Jemison. I am a first-year PhD student in the Department of History and Philosophy of Science. I've been doing this work in the education space of education access, pro bono admissions consulting for the past, oh gosh, almost a decade now, mostly around, what is it, 8 years? Yeah, so I've been able to do it in the States, which is where I'm from, but it's been really exciting to focus it a bit more on getting students from the African continent and also the diaspora to Cambridge, and thinking about how important it is for them to have the sorts of relationships and honestly social network and mentoring that you all provide them access to. We're incredibly excited for that, but we're also recognizing that folks with these identities, and especially some of the ones we focused on where people are coming from conflict zones, where people are identifying as women, or identifying as having some sort of disability. We've really focused on that this year. And so it's been really exciting for us to be able to partner in that way, but we're really just looking forward to one, really successful applications, but also recognizing that definitions of success will not just be based on how students are able to be admitted to Cambridge or what their funding looks just in this space, but what this program also means for them to be able to take the skills and the personal statements and the advice when it comes to reaching out to potential supervisors or finding references or revising their CV, and apply that to applications for other programs, but also just their general personal and professional development. So I think I've said enough, and I will pass the mic.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name is Chisom Ipobo, and I'm a first-year PhD student in geotechnical engineering. And I specifically study onshore wind turbine foundations and trying to redesign them to be applied in on the African continent and for African countries. And yeah, I think Alice and Maisha have said everything concerning the project and why it's so important to us. So I would guess I'll just move on to the slides. So I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
So this is just going to be a brief information session, and we're going to discuss the following topics. We're going to talk about the objectives of our program. I know Alice and Maisha talked about it, but I'll give some more details on that. And I'm going to give you our expectations and some guidelines for you as mentors in this program, and give you a brief timeline that the mentees will be following, giving you what's the general, when they're having the general sessions and what those topics will be, as well as the kind of like a checklist of what they need to be able to finish the application process. And I also give you some of the resources that we've given the mentees so that you can know where they're coming from and what they're basing whatever feedback that they need from you on. And then touch on the English language requirement, because most of the people coming in would require either IELTS or TOEFL. And in the last session, in the first general session for the mentees, they had a lot of questions on this. So just to give you some background to support them through this process. And then also tell you what's happening, what they're doing right now in terms of the kind of deliverables that we've given them for the month before the next general session, and what we've told them concerning CV preparation and personal statement writing, and also some resources for you as well, where you can get information to support your mentees. And finally, at the end, you have an opportunity to ask us some questions. So the reason why we started CAMP is we did a research 2 years ago looking at the percentage of Africans that are in the international student population of Cambridge, and we found that it was only about 2.1%. And compared with China, for example, that has 10%, we are disproportionately represented in the university. And we found that some of the issues would be a barrier due to the application fees, lack of information on the actual application process. Some people just didn't know what was required to get into CAMP, what they needed to provide to be able to have a good application. So ASCU has created CAMP to be able to provide one-to-one mentorship to outstanding African applicants and give them general guidance on the application process, helping them build strong applications, helping them through writing a good personal statement, project proposals, writing outstanding CVs, and also helping them in other parts such as finding referees and finding a supervisor that can boost the application. We also provide financial support for the application and testing fees. And because this year the application fees for PhD students have been scrapped, that puts less of a burden on us, and we're able to support more students this year. So we're very thankful for that. So as the mentors, we expect you to meet with your mentee, or for those of you that have each of your mentees, at least once per week from now, or from the start of the program to the end of the program in December. And that's just to make sure that they have a lot of opportunities to get support from you, and make sure that you're always in touch with whatever problems or wherever that journey is. And then we also expect you to maintain a professional and cordial relationship with your mentee, and to make sure that there's proper communication between you. And if there are any problems in that regard, you can talk to Maisha, Alice. And we also expect that you provide feedback or information and feedback in various forms, as well as encouragement, because some people, a lot of them may feel like they actually don't deserve to be at Cambridge, and we need to show them that this place, you're welcome here, regardless from where you're from, and that many resources and many communities in this university that helpful to you and welcoming you, and also help them look for network connections. Could be people from your departments, or for example, in advising them who they should contact for supervisors. You can see what field they're interested in, and maybe you know someone in that field and you can tell them, oh, you can contact this person, stuff like that. However, we ask that you refrain from providing financial support. If you see that your mentee is struggling in that regard for the application financial support, then just let us know and we'll try to support them in that. But your job is mostly to provide information and feedback on the application process, regardless of finances. So this is the timeline. Last week, we had the first general session, and in that session, we talked about contacting potential supervisors, contacting referees, preparing from standardized tests that may be required for their course of study, updating their CV, preparing an official transcript, because in some universities that can take a while, so it's nice to start very early. And in the next month is just to work on these different areas, and they're expected to fill in a mid-program progress report, just to let us know where they are, how far they've gone in the CV building or personal statement writing or getting official transcript, or all of these areas. And it's your job as a mentor to make sure that they have filled this form in. And on September 8th, we'll have the second general session, which goes into more detail in writing your CV and personal statement, and also writing the funding applications. In October, we'll have the third general session, which is where we talk about PhD proposals. I know this is not relevant we know this is not relevant for all the applicants, but it's still nice that they're all welcome to join. And finally, the fourth general session, which is the general Q&A, where mentors are welcome to join as well to provide their own knowledge or tips to all the mentees. And in this is the final leg of the program. So this is where you're trying to do the finishing touches on the CVs, personal statement, PhD proposals, and guide them to be able to submit that application by December 2nd. So this is the application checklist. So we expect that everyone knows what course they're applying to, although the admission process officially starts September 15th, but this may vary between courses, so you can also check for your individual course as well. And they need to be aware of the entry requirements. So you should also know what the entry requirements for the course is as well, and make sure that they are meeting those requirements. And well, we are working with the funding deadline, and although there are two for December 2nd and January 6th, we're going to tailor the program towards the December 2nd deadline so that everyone will finish the program at the same time. And yeah, they need to make sure they register on the applicant portal, and you need to provide support in them getting academic references, and just give them tips on who will be a good referee for the application. In the course of your discussions you have with them, you can say, oh, okay, this person that you talked about may have a good, have better experience, or have more to say towards your reference than maybe someone else that they have wanted. And you can also provide support on colleges. You can give them your own personal experience. You can tell them an experience of someone else you know in a different college. It's just to take what they help them, guide them in what they might want from a college or from their living situation, and just give them advice on where they need to be where they could be. And also specify that some colleges have funding. So you can also advise them to pick a college based on the funding that they can get from the college as well. And you need to be aware of the supporting documents for the course of study. So PhDs will require research proposals, MPhils or masters may not necessarily. So just to be aware of the different documents that they need to provide. You also need to provide support on external funding. For example, the Gates Scholarship or the Chevening on Commonwealth Scholarship they do require a separate application process. So you're expected to also guide them through that process, but it shouldn't be too different from what they're actually doing in Cambridge application. And we provide a mock interview in case they get an interview, but this is beyond the scope of your formal responsibilities as mentors. But if you're willing to come back to provide a mock interview, for example, if your mentee was accepted to that stage, then you're always welcome. We're happy to have you. These are some of the resources we provided to the mentees. They have a WhatsApp group where they can discuss with each other. And they also have a Google Drive folder, which includes tips on writing CVs, the different funding available at the universities, both external and internal, the guide, the career service CV and personal statement guides for both undergraduates and postgraduates. So you can also have a look at the drive as well if you want to know where the headspace is at when they're making their CV or personal statement or PhD proposals. And then we provide financial assistance for application fees. And as I said before, a mock interview. So on the English language requirement, like I said, most of the people will have to take an English language test to be as a requirement of that course. And in the general session, there's lots of confusion as well. But in generally, all of them will be required to take an English language test unless they've completed over 3 years of study at an English-speaking country, which is usually UK, US, or Canada, no more than 2 years before the proposed start date. So you can direct them to this website where it gives you different options to fill in, and it tells you what scores are required for each English language test. So right now, what we told them to do in the last general session was to go to the course, postgraduate course website and decide on the courses they have. I assume they've all decided, and check the course requirements and then work towards achieving those requirements. They're also meant to prepare an official transcript, which is more like just them contacting the universities, but some of them had questions on what an official transcript actually is. So you might have to have a look on what they're calling the official transcript to see whether it's actually going to be accepted by university. Then they need help. They're right now contacting their referees and potential supervisors. So they'll need your advice on looking at maybe the introductory emails that they'll send to them, or what kind of, who would be a good reference or a good potential supervisor, or in cases where the supervisor or referee doesn't reply, what next steps should they take? Those are kind of questions that they'll be asking you. And research begins on preparation for standardized tests. So some courses may need a GRE, I think, in the George Business School, and also the English language test as well. So you can provide support on those. Then we told them to create a bucket CV, which I'll touch on in the next slide, which is basically just all the relevant experience in one CV, regardless on how long the CV actually is. And then thinking about the personal statements. So the next 2 slides are what we told them to think about when they're making the bucket CV and the personal statements. So we told them to organize their most recent CV and include everything that they have done that's relevant to the course. And what we expect you is to look through the CV and give them tips on what they could remove or hopefully expand upon, or maybe include, if through your discussions you can see that they may have an experience, a useful experience that they haven't highlighted in CV. For example, teaching volunteer experience is very useful for a PhD application. So if they haven't put that in, you can ask them, do you have any teaching experience? Can you expand on that on your CV? So that's fairly straightforward. And in terms of personal statements, there might be a lot of discussions to be had on why they actually want to come to Cambridge. You need to make sure that they can fully express why they want to come to Cambridge, both with you and in their personal statement, and why they want to study the course, and their past experiences achievements and how that actually ties into the course and just not just random, maybe fairly good experiences, but just not connected to the course. And yeah, like Maisha said, that we focus on people that may have come from conflict zones or experienced some kind of obstacles in life. And it would be nice to add that into the CV as a way of boosting the kind of qualities that's required for the course or for someone that's going into that course. So you can help them to be able to tailor their experience to make that CV, make that personal statement stronger as well. And I think everything else is fairly straightforward at this point. So yeah, the information that you could use. So the postgraduate administration's website is very useful. But if you can't find all the information you need there, you can contact them through the contact form, but they also provide an email that you could email directly. You can also talk to your department or the relevant department of your mentee, because some mentors and mentees don't have the exact same department. You can ask your supervisor as well, because they should be kind of aware of the Cambridge application process, so they can give you tips for a good application. And the career service have good resources on civil CV writing and personal statements writing as well. So you could go to all these links and have a look at these resources as well. So thank you, that's all. Any questions? I think I'll stop sharing my screen. Feel free to add any questions in the chat. There financial support for mentees to take up IELTS? No, not at the moment. It's just purely for the application fee.
I can read out this question. So this year is okay, but last year I struggled to have meetings with my mentee due to bad internet connection. Any advice or support on this? One, thank you for your question. So we haven't had people make reports of that so far, but I think some of our own communications with mentees, we found like voice notes have been helpful for being able to share the information, then they can access it once it's a bit more available, but also via a platform that uses a little bit less data than perhaps doing like a video call. And it also is just an easy way for people to ask one-off questions, especially if you aren't able to kind of have a full video meeting.
Yeah, I agree. When I'm in Nigeria and I have meetings with my supervisor, we find that WhatsApp is better than Zoom in doing the meeting. So you could try a different platform such as WhatsApp.
The next question, one problem I've had more last year than this year. Thank you. Okay, shout out to all the returning mentors. I'm really excited to have you again. Is finding a connection that's reliable enough to see or even talk. Yeah, so I think that kind of gets to what Tristan was sharing about WhatsApp being a bit more helpful. Also, folks who have suggestions outside of WhatsApp that you think might be helpful, feel free to share those as well. But when we're talking about that platform, it's not just so I mentioned voice notes, and then just mentioned actual like video calls have been a bit more stable along those lines. When I'm traveling, I found that like extremely useful. As long as your mentee is being responsive, it might be even helpful to ask them what sorts of platforms that they've had better success with, especially because all of them are coming from different countries. So if they have a platform that they would suggest, I would definitely go with that. For me, it's like WhatsApp, then sometimes Skype, but I've had less success with Zoom and Teams if it's going across or if I'm with someone who doesn't have that stable as a connection. Next question, one of my mentees is planning to apply to programs outside of Cambridge. Would you recommend to encourage our mentees to do this in general? Yes, that's a good question. It's something that has informed how we've taken our approach to the program this year. Even when we were talking to the folks who founded the program last year, one of our big things was, even in looking through their report, was expanding this idea of what success means. Cambridge is only so big, only has so much funding. Also, people need to kind of explore what opportunities are available so that they find the institution, the department, the faculty that works best for them. We want to support them in that effort and want to encourage them to apply to places across the board, especially if they know that there is a funding opportunity available at that institution that would be conducive to the program that they're looking to apply to. So yes, absolutely, we'd encourage them to do that in general. I think it's super helpful for folks who are doing master's programs where funding is tougher and perhaps like less available. But even just as good as a suggestion for PhD folks, just because funding is still going to be something up in the air, but also since they're spending so much time in their program, it's helpful to make sure that they find the place that's the best fit. Next question is from Austin. Do we have access to the self-reflection forms that the mentees are supposed to fill out? I can't find it and my mentee didn't know about it. Mentees should know about it because we talked about it in our session, but we can share that. We haven't sent them that reflection form yet. We can, when we share that, we can like BCC you all so that you have access to that if you think that would be helpful. I'm seeing a thumbs up.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, all right, great. Can we share our WhatsApp numbers with mentees? Oh, that's a good question.
You're happy to.
Yes. We think it's okay if you all establish that that's the platform you want to check into. We have not shared WhatsApp numbers like from mentees with any of you because we haven't really gotten their consent to do that. But if you all agree that that's a helpful platform, feel free. I think the next question is specifically for you, Chisholm, from Dawit at 529. Do you see that one?
Oh, are the mentees aware of what specific support and guidance they'll be receiving from mentors? I thought the expectation from both sides should be the same. Yes, I think in the last general session, we made it clear. It's kind of very similar slides. So we've told both groups the same thing as well. So in terms of the CV building, feedback on CVs, personal statements, all the rest, they are aware of what they are to expect from you, as well as what they need from you.
And something
that question.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was going to add, I think it was a suggestion from Stanley. So we realized that we could have been a bit clearer about, who should reach out to who and when. So something that we expressed to the mentees via email and in the general session is that, people have volunteered their time to support you having the strongest application that you can. So we think the onus should be on you as a mentee to make sure that you're reaching out to your mentor, that you're making whatever questions you have kind of clear to them, knowing that this is someone who's in your corner and who, has agreed to support you throughout this process. In terms of the type of guidance they're getting, I think that's probably the one change that we might not have communicated to you all, is that we are asking the mentees to initiate the conversation. And of course, if you haven't heard from your mentee, please let us know. We've had a few cases of like someone getting sick or people changing emails or just different things across the board. So if you haven't heard from your mentee, reach out to us. We'll try to help resolve that. And we do the same if a mentee says they haven't heard from their mentor. I think the next one is, that's advice for Philip. Another question regarding the language requirements. Maybe I missed it, but is it possible to have a free evaluation through the Cambridge Language Center? I want to be straightforward. I'm not familiar with this process, so I can't give a definitive answer, but we can take a look through and check. And when we send out the link to the video, but also to the slides, we can provide a more like definitive answer, if that's helpful. So I just opened that link and I'll take a look.
I'm looking through the link.
I know there have been other people who have had questions about the language requirement, especially since sometimes it seems like it can differ across courses. There's some countries that do have English as an official language, but then the requirements aren't evenly
Yeah,
applied when you think in the same way that they are for like the UK. I think you said UK, Canada, and US earlier. But we could take a look at that and
yeah, I'm just had a read through, and List B, which has a lot of African countries, says that depending on the results of the assessment, the applicant either attends one of the courses or must take an accepted language test. So I think all in all, it's just best to just email the admissions or department to make sure what it is, because it's very up in the air at the moment.
Follow-up question about applying to other places. If I feel like Cambridge is not a good fit for my mentee or that they don't have a realistic chance of being admitted, what should I do? For example, for PhD, even if the applicant is strong, it could be that their research interests don't match any of the professors in the department. This might be the case for a mentee. That's a good question. I'm happy to also go further in depth on this question offline, but I think my first instinct is that overall, as we were reading through the applications, and I don't know if we told you all how many we got, but we had like 399 applications to review. So when we were giving these answers of we'll reach back out to you starting in mid-July is because we didn't know how long it would take to review all of those applications. And we also were doing blind review. So we're moving like name and country and some other factors so that we could be as fair as possible in that process. So we were looking holistically at professional experience people might have, research experience, volunteer leadership, of course, academics, and also like the short kind of personal statement people submitted. So there are a lot of factors we were thinking about to make it as holistic as possible, but also to give a more well-rounded perspective. So we were choosing people who we thought, would, with mentorship, would do well in the admissions process. If there are some things that have stood out to you that are cause for concern, please feel free to reach out to us. For the second half of your question, sometimes research interests don't match. That happens. It can be frustrating. It's difficult to navigate. Maybe a supervisor that you want to work with isn't even replying, or they're going on sabbatical. So many other things, so many other factors can kind of shift whether Cambridge at this time is a good fit or whether it's a good fit long term. If that's the case, I think opening up your mentees' view to other institutions or other programs where there might be a post where the exact research they want to do is research that university is recruiting for and they already have like a funded PhD program for example, that can be helpful. If the student doesn't seem super keen on their project, maybe there's some flexibility, perhaps there are ways to kind of like tailor their work. If they're reaching out at this time and they're dedicated to keeping up with the faculty members they're reaching out to or checking out the research that's in the department, then there might be some ways to perhaps work with a potential supervisor to align their work with what the department is doing. That being said, in our general session with the mentees, we told them that it was like their responsibility to understand what sort of research their department is doing, what the faculty members that they might want to work with are doing, and to make sure that the research that they're interested in actually fits the programs they're applying to. We also told them that sometimes you might think I did physics in undergrad and now I'm going to apply to a PhD in physics. And then you get to that point and you realize the work you want to do isn't actually being done in the Cambridge physics department. It might be done somewhere else in like material science or electrical engineering. So we were trying to also encourage them to expand how they're thinking about their research and not tying themselves to a department if it fits better elsewhere. Yeah. And so we're going to check on Mars' question. Next one, the language center assessment is normally used for candidates who nearly miss. For them. Okay, that's helpful context. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Reading really quickly. Okay, David's question. Is there a thought about advice when choosing a college? It only comes into play after admission to a chosen course, but it does concern applicants? Yeah, that's a big one. So this question did come up during the general session with the mentees. One of the things we talked about are some factors that they should be considering when they're thinking about colleges. Some of them were mentioned earlier. Funding. If you know that there's a funding opportunity at a college and you could really benefit from that funding opportunity, then you should be strongly considering that college. We talked about things like location in terms of distance from your department. We talked about, whether someone might want to go to like a single sex or single gender college, like different things that might make up how they want to have like their experience. But something that was really emphasized, and I think Tristan did a really nice job of that, is that at the end of the day, you're going to have like a good Cambridge experience at any college you're going to. So it's not the end of the day if you don't get into the college of preference. But if there are certain things about a college that are beneficial to you, so funding, location, and then maybe access to particular resources, those are things you should be considering.
I think Jan has a question.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering, we are at the stage of sending the applications out to the supervisors. Do you have any specific tips to do that? And also, is it a good idea to include the concrete funding, or that should be dealt later on in the stage? Thank you.
I can start for that question. I'm thinking back to our general sessions. We provided like some tips to them about that as well. But the thing we told them to focus on was, one, being able to concisely but directly describe yourself to the department you're going to. So a bit about like your academic background in terms of what you studied or particular courses you might have done in previous degrees that you think make you especially suited for the program. Being able to summarize what your research interest in, and if you already have like a solid draft of your research proposal, so thinking more so about PhD students, being able to attach that. When we're thinking about that bucket CV and kind of letting them know your research experience in those other areas, being able to attach those documents as well. But I think the biggest things are, one, making sure that the person, or reaching out to someone so that you can understand if, one, they'll be supervising students in the coming year, if they have availability, if they are interested in your research. But the biggest thing is if they are okay with you putting them down as like the desired supervisor, which is generally an indication that they would be willing to work with you if you were admitted to the university. I'm trying to think of other big things that we talked about. Anything I'm missing, Jason?
I think more also following up on the email, because you might not get a reply early or soon after. So maybe a week later, also to follow up on the email. But yeah, I agree with everything else you said.
And if it's helpful, a link, it sounds like a link to the slide. So the slides that we went over with the mentees are essentially just further in depth than the ones we shared with you all. So we can include those as well for additional context. And I think, the other thing, when it comes to the question of funding, I think if you do already have secured funding, that is, your mentee does, that's amazing. That was not my case, but that's amazing. And so that's something they can mention that can be extra persuasive. But also if they are aware of funding opportunities the department might have. So maybe it's someone who's interested in the applications of artificial intelligence for, I don't know, environmental conservation. Okay, like computer science has a fund for that that's like relatively new. And so that's something they might want to start a conversation about earlier on. Yeah, thank you for your question. And then it looks like we have one more for those of you who are from the African continent or for those of you who are from the African continent or the African diaspora and evidently already successfully went through the application process, what bit of perhaps unexpected advice would you give mentees that you yourself retrospectively would have been glad to have? So if some folks want to answer that, I might call on some people too, but. I think it would be extra helpful if it's someone who was applying directly from the continent, since that is the biggest demographic of our mentees.
Mm.
And if you'd like to, just maybe get us started, if there's like one piece of advice.
I mean, I did my undergrad at Cambridge, so I already kind of knew the system. I think the only retrospective thing I would think about was starting earlier, but they have already started early, so we're doing a good job already.
I'm looking in the chat and Hamid said,
so search for a supervisor early, so.
And then one of the pieces of feedback that Cynthia, who's a final year, gave, and one of the founders of the mentorship program gave, is, oh, and I just forgot it. Oh, to start asking for their documents as soon as possible. So when you're thinking about getting letters from their referees, but also getting transcripts, depending on the institution, that can take some time. And it's also something that you don't need to have all of, you know, your personal statement or your research proposal fully completed in order to, like, you know, have that kind of going concurrently. So it's, you know, reaching out to get your transcript. You can do that even if you're just thinking about going to Cambridge. You don't need to know exactly what you're doing. Reaching out to referees, or at least identifying who those people are and asking them early so that they have time to write out a full reference letter, but also that you have time to focus on what points of your like relationship with them in your like academic history or professional history you want them to point out. I have another comment. Take your English test early if you can. Some departments may not interview you without evidence of English competency. That's a good one.
Yeah. So that makes the language requirement even more confusing because, yeah, because you need a test for some departments. So it's at the end of the day, email the department. That's what I mean.
So I think I think maybe offline we can do a bit more kind of just research into what might be some more helpful advice regarding the language requirements, because we were getting some consistent questions about it, but also what even our interpretation of like the competencies aren't clear. And then if anyone else wants to chime in with a piece of advice.
Well, someone's hand is raised. Stanley?
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I will just keep my camera off. But one piece of advice would be to never be scared to send an email. Because I remember I had that, you know, fear of, oh, should I send this email? Should I ask this question? You know, what would they think of me and all of that? Never be scared to send an email. Ask those questions. Oh, I can't get the English language test on time. What can I do? I can't do this. What can I do? And many of the administrative staff in the departments have been very helpful. So, but sometimes with the kind of experience we have back home, you know, we're not sure, you know, and we're like second guessing ourselves, should we send that email? So one very good piece of advice would be to just send the email and then wait for feedback.
Yeah. And one other thing that came up in our general session is that some people were also, okay, then there's one from Adai as well. Some people are also hesitant to apply for funding, which like for us, we were like, no, apply for everything, like tick the box for gates, like whatever you need to do to kind of cast your net wide, you should be doing. And then we have a comment from Adai, which says, encourage them to organize their information in one place, usually a spreadsheet with some tabs with all the links and relevant information is best. And then
It will
Ademola.
also be helpful if you as a mentor has access to that spreadsheet as well. So you can see it's up to date as well. So that's a good idea.
And then another,
Yeah.
you can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Just to follow up on that comment, I think it's departments that conduct interviews before making an offer. I think it's some of those departments that do require English test before even doing the interviews. So in such instances, they should check with those departments, because if you don't, you will just be waiting to be invited for an interview, and without an English test, they might, an example is Department of Pathology. So without English test, you won't even be interviewed. And I think Master of Law as well, corporate law, they require English tests to be submitted early enough. Then secondly, in terms of contacting supervisors, applicants should not just contact supervisors, they should also look carefully at the supervisor's page. Some of these supervisors would write it there that's currently not accepting PhD students. So you don't need to contact those supervisors. While some would write it clearly that graduate students needed in my lab. So those are the supervisors you can contact as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And so if folks have other suggestions, please include them in the chat or raise your hand. And then also if there are additional questions, please like put it in the chat or raise your like virtual hand. I think one thing I wanted to add is also like contacting people who are like currently in the program that you're looking to do. So when I was like deciding between departments, and like I knew like what I wanted to do for my research, but it could have fit pretty nicely in 2 different departments. I talked to PhD students that were in their first and final years in both of those departments, which gave a lot of perspective on like what their experience was, how it was for them, because they had research that was also kind of on the fringe where it could have fit within different areas. Getting an idea of like their experience, both like in the department is just, you know, among like their fellow PhD students, but also working with different like faculty members and what they thought was helpful in choosing a supervisor, some things that I should consider. And so it can be helpful to find those people, and they're often listed on department sites. But I think one or like a couple of the people I talked to, I also like found on LinkedIn. One of them had like a YouTube channel. So it's just different ways of finding people who might be able to provide some insight about what my experience might be as an academic in that space. And I'm not seeing any additional words of advice. I'm also not seeing any questions. I hope I haven't missed anyone. So I think we'll say thank you. Thank you so much for just agreeing to be mentors for this program, for taking on a mentee or mentees, for having done it in the last year and coming back to do it again this year. We really appreciate your time, your energy, your effort, and just the work you're doing to support students in their applications. We look forward to seeing how your relationship grows with the folks you're mentoring, and how you might even kind of expand their knowledge of different opportunities at Cambridge or at other institutions or just in the space of like academia. We're really excited that like the mentees are excited. Like one of them showed up to was in the Zoom room like 3 hours early, then like came back again 30 minutes early. I was like, oh wow, this is, you're really excited about this. So it's nice to see that, but it's just also us recognizing how like the very communities that we're trying to impact are ones that have like systematically been excluded from spaces like this. So we want to make sure that we're doing our best to provide those resources that they might not have had access to before. Yeah, you're welcome. And with that, I will end the recording.